Yeah, hello everyone. Welcome to the presentation about the office phone Reinvented again and how to make money with VoIP. My name is Christian Stredicke, and I do have a history with office phones. I can say that we built one of the first VoIP phones, and it might be actually the only one that is still being sold today and is widely still used in the market. And over the last 20 years, I did pay attention to the market, and I would like to share with you what I am observing right now and what I've heard in the last couple of years. And when we talk about the modern VoIP phone, we obviously have to take a look at the cell phones. The cell phones have a long history of making devices obsolete, starting with, for example, the camera. Although there's still cameras today, but I think most of the people are using their smartphones for taking photos these days. The flashlight has been absorbed by the cell phone as well. Nobody's carrying a flashlight in the pocket anymore. They just use the cell phone. And even things like the book has seen some changes. People are just bringing their cell phones and for reading a book. Actually, the TV to a certain degree has been replaced by the cell phone. If you are taking a train, sometimes you see lots of people commuting and watching TV on their smartphones. And of course, the question is, what's happening to the VoIP phone? Will it be replaced by the smartphone, or will it be still being used, or is it something in the middle? So Apple did, I think, an important step a couple of years ago when they released iOS 13. They made it possible that essentially voice and VoIP apps can coexist easily next to each other on the same device. That means when you are making a phone call on your GSM app and there's a call coming in from your VoIP app, the operating system will make sure that those two calls are being handled properly. That means you're not kind of both at the same time on the speaker or any other kind of confusing and more or less funny things. And that makes it really easy and makes it really possible to have all sorts of VoIP apps on the same device. And I'm pretty sure if you have an Apple device, you have at least 2 or 3 VoIP apps already on your device. And the question is, why not also adding a VoIP app for your telephone system? And I think that's happening right now. More and more telephone systems are adding apps. And that is definitely something which is not going away, and it's something which is growing more and more. But Google also did a lot of good things, and when I say a lot, that means primarily from a numbers point of view that there's like a sheer number of devices out there that are built on Android, and all these devices are technically able to handle VoIP calls. So why not convert the Android phone also into a VoIP phone so that you can talk to your colleagues and take your business calls on that phone as well. And Google also did another, I think, very good and welcome move. They make it pretty easy to use WebRTC on the Android platform. Essentially, all APIs that are available in the browser are also available from the app, which makes it very easy to design the audio subsystem to support audio and video, by the way. The PC was actually ready for a long time. Our devices is practically there for 20, 30 years. And the PC has lots of resources. The PC actually does not usually have a battery. At least the concept is not built around a battery. There is no such thing as waking up apps when the user does an interaction. That makes the app design much easier. That means we can assume that the app is running all around the clock. That means incoming calls can be just signaled over a regular socket. There's no need to talk to a wake-up server. And that makes it actually very easy and straightforward to design a VoIP application. What has changed last couple of years, and maybe specifically last year, was that the number of headsets has literally exploded. I think it's so that most of the PC hardware sold last years are 100% Bluetooth ready. That means you can pair practically any Bluetooth headset on the market with a PC without any problems. And they have great audio quality. And even if you're using a wired headset, it works very well. So that is another pool of devices that's really ready for using it with a telephone system. And even if you're using the browser, this is becoming also surprisingly a mainstream usage for a voice application. So that all, I mean, the pandemic was quite a disruptive event, obviously, but also work for the telephone system world, because suddenly everybody had to go home, and IT administrators practically had no time for preparing anything. Literally, people were sent home, and staff was struggling to make sure that people can still communicate. And that was a challenge, and one knee-jerk reaction was obviously to move to video conferencing, because at that time it was widely available and actually widely advertised already. So people essentially shifted away from internal meetings to online meetings. And at the end of the day, it means that people were not only able to work from the office, they were able to work from home, but it inherently means they can work from the road and practically anywhere, from the car. And well, because they can work from anywhere, they can also work from the office. And the office essentially has just become another place where people can work. But with these new possibilities also came new challenges, because in the office you are physically present, and if you're not physically present, the phone can ring all day, all night. It won't disturb you. However, if you are at home, that's a different situation. You do actually want to log off eventually. You want to say, okay, I'm not working anymore. It's the weekend. It's the evening, and I don't want to take calls. You don't want to have calls 5 o'clock in the morning waking you up. And I think it has become an essential feature to be able to determine what the working hours are and when to disrupt employees and when not, simply because it's an acceptance problem. I mean, maybe some diehard workers can work 10 hours or 12 hours a day, but eventually when it comes to 20 or 24 hours, then everybody sooner or later will quit and essentially disable the app. So that's why there needs to be a way to control at what times employees are working and when not. And this is an acceptance problem. It's not a really technical problem, but the acceptance problem is very important, because without acceptance, people just simply not use it and essentially do everything to make sure it doesn't work. Does that mean we can kiss the VoIP phone bye-bye? I don't think so. First of all, what I've learned over the 20 years is that everything in the telecom world is a little bit slower than in other IT industries. So there's a long life cycle. It means these changes will all take years and years before they're fully visible. And we also have to see, like, it's so much built into the life and the work process to lift up a handset and to talk and to put the handset back into the cradle. And that is actually, it's very practical. So why would people change it? And also, there is no need to retire them, because they actually happily coexist with the apps. That means when the call comes in, you can pick it up wherever it fits you. If you feel like you want to pick it up on the handset, then you do that. And if you want to pick it up on the app, then you can do that as well. One of the things is that the VoIP phones today practically all of them use the SIP standard, which puts some limits on what can be done with a VoIP phone. It is really essentially restricted to voice and maybe a little bit BLF here and there. But I think that's quite a difference to the apps, and the apps were completely not restricted at all what we want to do. But with the VoIP phones, there are limits, and that's essentially putting more stress on the brands. I think the brands will be more important for a VoIP phone, and obviously stuff like the overall build quality and appearance. And it is already a competitive space, but it looks like this is going to be even more competitive in the future. But I think for the users, that's a good thing, because they will see over the coming years still top-notch desktop devices. I'm personally sick of video. I wasn't a big fan before, but maybe I had just a little bit too many video calls. I do believe it's something actually different than a telephone call. Video calls are usually scheduled, and they're scheduled in intervals of minimum 15 minutes. And in those 15 minutes, you cannot even scratch yourself in the face or a little bit dig in the nose or whatever, right? You can't get away from the camera. At least it's kind of impolite to do that. So you're stuck in front of the camera, and that's an entirely different interaction than what you would do on the audio. And also video calls are typically not two people calls, they are like many people calls. And we had meetings before, and now we have online meetings. And I probably was never a really big meeting fan, because a lot of people sitting there not really doing anything. And we kind of moved that productivity killer into the online world. And honestly, I'm not. I think it has to be we have to be very careful with time, obviously, and make sure that meetings are productive. Of course, they will find, and they did already find, the world, the entry into the business world. But from a telephony point of view, I think there will be still a huge difference between video conference and a telephone call. So that I think the relevance of video for the telephone call is not very much. It's nice if you can see the other person in a one-to-one call, but it is not really essential. And another thing we learned is that while people are moving the apps on their private devices, we have to talk about the address book again. I know that people are asking, why can't I use my address book from my device on my app? And the answer is that there's like a private space on the device, and then there's a workspace on the device. And Android actually has implemented that kind of separation between work and private. But that's not the case with Apple. And the problem is simply that the contacts and the data from the company is spilling over into the private space. That's a problem for ownership. Essentially, employees and companies need to be worried where their data is ending up. Most extreme example is like a real estate agent working for company A, and then have all the call records on the device and move to company B, and maybe taking the whole client base with them. So that's a problem, and it's even becoming in more and more countries, especially European Union, even a legal problem, because more and more companies simply need to document where their data is and actually make sure it's not spilling over out of that space. That's why I think the only answer can be that address books are stored on the server and they're not stored on the device. The device should not have any storage of call data records, and that can only be achieved if the app contains it. Also, the cloud is obviously much easier for working from anywhere, because you can reach a cloud server from anywhere. And it is a kind of necessity if you want to have your cell phone connected to the telephone system, because cell phones are practically anywhere. You cannot make assumptions about certain IP addresses. People are using them on the road. They're using them in hotel lobbies and I don't know what. And on the other hand, there is still a strong demand to keep the telephone system in a private network. It's a lot of it is just worry. Where is my data? Maybe not being very well informed where the data really is. There is maybe a reason for quality of service, because if you have the telephone system in the LAN, typically you can be sure that the quality in the office is top notch, and you can do certain things to make sure that the SIP trunk to the outside world also has a quality guarantee. So it still makes in many situations sense to keep the telephone system in a private network. However, that has a lot of consequences. First of all, the cell phones might be able to connect to that server over Wi-Fi. However, every connection on a cell phone needs to be encrypted these days. The apps simply don't allow it anymore to use unencrypted connections, and that means you need to put a valid certificate on the system. You can either buy one, and then you have the annual renewal fees for that. And in that case, you would be able to keep it really completely separate from the outside world. If you want to use service like Let's Encrypt, then you need to open certain ports to the public internet and expose that port to the outside world. And then the other problem is that if you have a cell phone working in the LAN and they take that cell phone home, the wake up would wake the app up, and if it is not able to reach the telephone server, then it would obviously cause a problem with the audio connection, which is very frustrating for people getting interrupted and then trying to accept the call and nothing works. And for these things, you have to set up quite complicated port forwarding to make sure that the signaling works for the app, and also the RTP ports have to be put forward to make sure that the audio works. It's possible, but it's a couple of extra steps that you need to take to make sure that this is also working. And from that point of view, the cloud is much easier, because you just completely expose the telephony services in the cloud, and you don't have to worry about these things. So I promised you in the beginning we have to talk about how to make money. So where's the VoIP phone market going? As I said, it's probably not going to be huge changes coming up, but that also means that the business model will probably still be pretty much the same like it used to be. Essentially, you're selling a phone, maybe a little bit markup, so you're making a few bucks on every device sold, and maybe a little bit fee for installing it. I do not believe that this is really huge potential. Will we pay for apps? That is a theoretical possibility. Problem is, if you are installing the apps on a private device, I don't think that employees would privately pay for the app. And if the company pays for the app, then you have the problem what happens if that employee leaves the company. So essentially you have to run after the money. So that's also a difficult situation. Termination is another way of generating some revenue. However, really to have a significant income source, that means you need to have a lot of termination. And usually that's a smaller fraction of what you would make on other services anyway. One-time license sales is, in my opinion, dead. Simply because the software industry has moved on a long time ago. If you look at Microsoft, Adobe, and you pick any name, they all have switched essentially to a recurring revenue model, and it's practically exceptional if you find a one-time sales. Plus, it's not a very attractive model for the partners as well, because maybe they make a one-time profit, but then they essentially they are cut off from a future revenues, and that's a difficult thing. We have the detailed question about concurrent calls or extensions. I would say the software industry also has long time moved on, and moved on to the seat-based model. Seats are just a lot more predictable. than resource-based pricing. You simply don't know how many calls people are making, and you don't want to have the situation that you're running out of the calls when times are busy. Let's say your product sells like hot pancakes suddenly, and you're losing calls. People are not able to call you because you were saving resources on that resource, which would be really a shame. But obviously, you do have a fixed number of employees, so that is very easy to calculate and very predictable in terms of usage. And I think what's definitely going to happen, and is already happening, is that most of the companies that need a telephone system are not able to run it really in a professional way anymore, because it's getting more and more complex. So they need people to run it, and people are specializing on doing these kind of services and offering it as a service. That means they're not selling the product itself. They're instead selling that the solution to run the telephone system for them. And this is typically done on a monthly basis, so the customer doesn't have to worry about license costs or even purchasing hardware. Essentially, you're selling just a service that just works, so companies can focus on what they're doing the best, and at the same time they can use a productivity tool called the telephone system to make sure that the employees are really working efficiently. And if there are software upgrades necessary, then everything is being taken care of. If there are other problems like setting up call routing paths and stuff like that, then it's just being done by the specialists. And this is also, from the revenue point of view, much more profitable for the specialists, because if you do the math, there's a much higher revenue potential than just reselling licenses or just selling a VoIP phone for a one-time sale. And it's also great for the clients, because they don't have to have the internal resources for keeping the phone system running, which is typically a lot more expensive, because if you're doing a job only 5% of your time, usually very ineffective doing this in terms of training and keeping up to date with what's going on. And if the only employee in the company who is able to maintain a phone system is on vacation and something happens, then the company has no service. That is something which is, in today's world, not acceptable. So before you go, I want to show you my license plate. I was surprised it's still available in Massachusetts. WebRTC, for those that don't know what it means, it essentially means web like the internet, RTC for real-time communications. I think that's the standard that will set the tone for the next years and maybe even decades in the telecom world. I think it's only a question of time when WebRTC is practically in every store, every shop, every clinic. Maybe people won't know what is underneath, but the WebRTC, I think, will practically get into every corner of the telecom market as the technology being used for communicating. So if you are in the industry, I would pay attention to that keyword. And I think most of the products of upcoming years will use that technology. It's similar to what happened in many other IT industries, where practically everything has moved into the browser. And the same thing is also happening right now with the telephony. All right, thank you very much. If you have any questions, comments, just feel free to reach out to me. The address can be found here on the video or on our website. All right, thank you very much.